3D Touch is one of the newest features in the latest batch of iPhones, and by far really the only one relevant to gamers. See, Apple's been really pushing its use in a lot of apps like email or Instagram where you can preview images before opening them, but when you look at how it can be applied to app games, it gets a lot more interesting. Now, first off, if you don't know what 3D Touch is, basically the 6S lines of phones all now have pressure-sensitive displays, so it's not just about how long or how short you press, but also how hard. Now, this is interesting for app games for two different reasons. First off, you can condense controls. When you're playing a game on your phone, you want as little of the screen as possible to be dedicated to overlaid buttons. So for instance, let's say in an action game where you can have light and heavy attacks, well, instead of having two separate buttons, you can make one button where you lightly press it for a light attack or press more firmly to do a strong one. Second, it can be used for much more precise control over situations where you can move things on a gradient. For instance, during the Apple keynote, they showed off a new upcoming game where you could touch something to shoot at it, and the more firmly you pressed, the more you would zoom in on the target. Now, as of right now, there's really only one game on the App Store that uses 3D Touch in an interesting way, and that's GDrive, one of the more successful iOS racing games. And it uses that second example I gave of how you could use 3D Touch, where basically the screen mimics a gas pedal, where you can lightly touch to just slowly accelerate, or press down as hard as you can to floor it. Now, after actually having used it, I gotta say, it was a lot more intuitive than I thought it would be, but at the same time, I have this image in my head of someone who just has stupid high grip strength and taking the game a little too seriously, associating the firmer I press, the faster I go, and just eventually smashing their iPhone screen with their thumb. And really, the ideas we've seen so far in previews and games that have been released are just the tip of the iceberg of what you could use 3D Touch for in a lot of popular genres. For instance, you could do a top-down shooter where while you're holding your finger on the screen, you'll rapidly fire, but if you press down more firmly, you'll perform a charge shot instead, or maybe shoot some kind of super powerful bomb. You could have an FPS game where right now a lot of them either only have hip shooting or really awkward controls for aiming down sights, where touching the screen will make you aim, and then pressing more firmly will make you fire, either pressing repeatedly to burst fire or just holding down to spray and pray. Puzzle and mystery games could give you whole new ways of interacting with your environment, where objects react to how hard you push on them, or you could even use that zoom in example I gave earlier, where you can inspect an item and the more firmly you press down, the more you'll look at really specific parts of it. And card games could even just borrow the functionality that we're seeing in Instagram, where you can just lightly touch a card to inspect it and look at the details, and then press down to actually play it. And honestly, these are just the really obvious basic ideas of how 3D Touch could apply to more popular genres. Point is that 3D Touch is actually a really cool new idea when you think about how it can be used for app games, and honestly, I'm really excited to see how game devs can use it in more interesting ways. The thing is, this is currently only on the newest set of iPhones, so we're probably not going to see very many games that are based solely around using 3D Touch. We might get one to help showcase it, but for the most part, a lot of devs are probably going to make games where you can have options to play with or without it. But given some time and a few more launches, we might start to see some really interesting games come out thanks to this functionality. Well, that was just my quick 2 cents on the 3D Touch function of the new iPhones. If you guys have any cool ideas for how this could be used in games, make sure to let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button to let me know, as well as subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.